Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Beauty, Brains and the Bag podcast with Powerful Princess. My name is Princess Agumbiade and I am your host. Today we'll be speaking about how to create your dream life, becoming your ideal self. Remember on the last episode, I spoke about the concept of self, the self concept, knowing your ideal self, knowing your real self, and then understanding how to get to a place of a congruent self concept. Just to piggyback a bit, when your self concept is congruent is when your ideal self and your real self are in alignment. And today I will be taking you on the process to creating, or rather on the process to taking yourself into becoming that ideal person, becoming the person that you had always dreamt of becoming. Jim Quick said something. The human potential is one of the only infinite resources in the world. Almost everything else is finite. The human potential remains the ultimate superpower. There's no limit to our ability to learn, to think, or create. And this brings me to one of my, I don't want to call it a fear, but one of my fears as a Christian. It is getting to heaven's gates, on the last day and finding out that God had deposited a multitude of abilities and things in me, but I never got to explore any of them, or I never got to become any of the things that God had written in my destiny, just because I was afraid to explore the possibilities. And for those who are non-Christians, let's imagine that you were given a bag, and in that bag there's a lot of possibilities of what you can become. There's a lot of treasures, but you were just too afraid to ever open that bag. And you spent all your life, everything you needed, or everything you ever needed was in that bag. You went through the storm. You had a raincoat in that bag, but you were too afraid to open the bag. And so you never got to use a raincoat. So you got wet. You went through the desert. There was no water. You were so thirsty, so parched. But in that bag that you carry, you had water to drink. But guess what? You never opened the bag, so you never saw the water. And then you finally get to your destination and you realize that you had spent 100 years on a 10-year journey just because you never opened the bag. And this is speaking to everyone listening to my voice today. There is no limits to who you can become. There is no limits to how great you can be. The only limit that there could be is, of course, your imagination. Now, this leads me to explaining my 5 proven methods to creating your ideal self or your ideal life. Number 1, visualize your ideal self. Number 2, set goals. Number 3, do a self audit. Number 4, get in action mode. And number 5, create your success environment. Now, let's start with the visualization. What exactly is visualization? Visualization is the process of practicing, experiencing whatever it is you want in your life. I would say it's kind of like training your mind into getting there first before you get there. And it is extremely important for people who really want to become more than they currently are. Whatever step you're trying to climb to, you have to first of all get there in your mind before you can get there physically. And this is why the power of the mind cannot be underestimated. So visualization is actually like a process of exercising your mind and training it to be able to transport you to the places that you want to go, because your mind has to get there first and then you would proceed there. Some people often say things like, come on, be realistic. Stop being unrealistic. And I just wonder, because what is realistic? I think basically realistic is very relative, And I always say, when people say be realistic, they're mostly referring to the limits of their own personal imagination. Not yours, theirs. What they often say be realistic about, what they refer to, are things that they cannot conceive as possibly ever happening. But somewhere in the world, someone has done it. What you are visualizing, what you are aspiring to, someone has done it. They might have had different circumstances as you do, but they had done that thing regardless. In fact, a lot of people that are innovators today, if they were realistic, they would never have invented what they invented. We would never have had the light bulb from Thomas Edison if he was ever trying to be realistic. So, don't try to be realistic. Determine what realistic is to you. Define realistic on your own terms. Go ahead and just dream. What kind of life do you want? What is the happiest you think you'll be? On what levels would you have to play to be at your happiest? Visualize that person, and then let's create a vision board out of these, your crazy dreams and visions. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because a lot of people, everybody has a dream. Everybody has what they think they want to be and all those fanciful ideas. But sometimes these things end up being only ideas, and they never become actual things. They never go from being dreams to actualizations. And this is where now taking your visions from just being ideas in your head and putting them, into what I would call a vision board. This is one step, right? And a vision board is basically just a board that has pictorial representations of your visions. So what kind of career do you want to have? There's a picture out there that depicts that career. Find that picture, print it out, and add it to your vision board. Don't make this process a very Herculean task for you. You can create a vision board in a matter of minutes. It doesn't have to be anything fanciful. It just has to have your visions. And you can do your visions for your relationship. You want to get married, you want to get engaged in the Eiffel Tower, whatever. Can find a picture of someone who got engaged in the Eiffel Tower. Put it in your vision board. Or you want to buy a G-Wagon, get the G-Wagon, put a picture of the G-Wagon in your vision board. You want to get an MBA, get a picture of someone who got an MBA, put it on your vision board. You need to just look at your visualization, right? Make them into pictures and have them as picture representations right in front of you. That is how you will create a vision board. Now, what exactly do vision boards do for us? And why are they absolutely necessary and important? And why do I suggest you get one? They are a visual reminder of your goals and your dreams. So basically, like I said earlier, you already have these things in your mind. All you have to just do is to put them to paper so that they can now be in physical form, and you can be able to then view it. And when you look at the vision board, when you're looking at it over and over and over, it's sending a message to your brain. It is reminding you when you wake up in the morning, I have some of my visions on my dressing table just next to me. When I wake up in the morning, get up from the bed, the first thing I see is that those things I wrote. Those are some of my vision boards. Not everything on my vision board is there, but a lot of things that I really are key to me are written there. If you've ever been to my room, a few friends who have been to my room, they can attest to having those words written there. And if you go to my personal study where I spend most of my time when I'm in the house, I have the pictures, I have the writings, my house is littered with my visions. And you know why? I don't care about making my house look picture perfect for now, because this is not my dream house. No, it's not. So remove the idea of, I don't want my house to look tacky. I don't want to put papers everywhere. Remember, we're trying to create something. You're trying to create something. So you are in your process. Don't get too comfortable in your current house that is not even your dream house yet, that you try to keep it so squeaky clean. Paste your visions, paste your dreams everywhere so that you can always be reminded of it. Another thing that having your vision or having a vision board and having your vision board everywhere, what it does to you is also it prompts you to take action. You begin to, as you're getting reminded by seeing that vision, you get reminded that you need to go ahead and do what needs to be done to create the actualization of that goal, to create that goal, or to cause that goal from going to just an idea or goal into being a reality for yourself, right? So another thing that it does for you is that it helps you build your confidence. When you wake up in the morning and you see your vision of how you want to make $1 billion, you're like, yes, I think I can do this thing. And now my confidence in myself is even further boosted. So it's very important for you to create a vision board. So besties, make sure that by the end of this video, or the end of this podcast rather, you have created for yourself a vision board. Now, let's go straight into setting goals. And then what's the difference between goals and visions? I mean, it kind of sounds like the same, goals, dreams, visions. And this is where I get to really explain to you the slight difference that they have. While I can say that your visions and your dreams are alike, yes, your visions are your dreams, your dreams are your visions. They could be used interchangeably. Goals, whereas, are very different. Goals are actually the actionable steps that you would use to bring in your visions to life. So that's the difference between your goals and your visions. And quite interestingly, goals are very serious. Visions are serious, but goals are what should actually bring these visions into reality. And anybody can set a goal. As a matter of fact, everybody sets goals. But the difference between a goal that would be achieved and a goal that would never be achieved is just a goal and a SMART goal. So SMART goals basically are goals that are S is specific, M measurable, A achievable, R relevant, while T time bound. I will explain every single one of it. Don't worry. When I say specific, this goal has to be clear and leave no room for vagueness. So for example, you can't just say, I want to be happy. That's a very vague goal. That's a goal, but it is a vague one regardless, because under what conditions are you happy? What makes you happy? If it's, I want to be in perfect health so that I can be happy, that is specific, because now you're saying that your perfect health is what brings you happiness, and you can actually now strive to be in perfect health. So when we talk about measurable, it has to be a goal that you can put a measure on. You have to be able to put a measure on the goal. So you can say, I want to be rich. That is, once again, vague, not measurable. So you want to be specific again, by saying, I want to make $1 million. You can measure that. It's very specific. It's measurable. That's a goal, right? But also you want it to be achievable. And, for someone who is very pro, there's no limit to what you can achieve. I also know that when you're creating your vision board, I want you to run wild with your visions. But when you're writing out your goals, I want you to write them in a way that it is actually attainable to you. Why? Because, if you're writing the goal of, I want to make $1 million in 1 week, and there is you who has never made $1 your entire life. So you don't have the products, or you have not become a product to make $1 million. You see, there's a big disconnect. And when you set a goal that is unattainable, it looks like goals don't work. But however, it's just that you didn't set the goals the right way. So you can start with setting a goal of, I want to make myself of value to be able to charge $1 million for a product, right? So you have to think about what product that you can be or that you can sell that can retail for that price. But you have to also know that it's going to take time, because you have to become that person or you have to develop that product. So once again, I say, make sure that your goal is attainable. Now we talk about R, which is the relevance. And talking about relevant goal, I would say relevant because it has to be relevant to your vision. It makes no sense to have a vision to become the world's renowned pilot or the world's best pilot, and then you're setting a goal to go to baking school. Well, for some reason it's not coherent, so it doesn't really tally. You want to have your goals set in a way that they are relevant to your visions, right? And then time bound. One of my mentors used to say something, and this is one of my favorite things to say, right, is that a goal without a date is just a wish. And that is facts. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a billionaire. I want to buy a Ferrari. I want to get married. I want to get an MBA. I want to get a degree. I want to start a business. Those are all wishes. You wish to do any of those things. But when you put a date to it, then it starts, changing from being just a wish to now becoming a goal. So you want to set your goals specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So always set SMART goals, darlings. Now, another thing I want to talk about here is that you can break your goals down. When I said dream lofty dreams and have lofty visions, it's because I know that you can have a 10-year goal. You can have a 5-year goal. You can have a 3-year. You can have a 1-year. You can have a 1-week goal. There's something called long-term goal. And then we also have the short-term goals. And we also have the mid-term goals. In fact, when I used to work in network marketing, I used to tell my team members to always set their goals in this 3 stages. Set a long-term goal. I'll tell them this should be like a 1 to 3 year goal. Set a mid-term goal. It should be like a 6 months to 1 year goal. Then set a short-term goal. And this should be like a 1 month to 3 months goal. And it's always easier because who you are now will help guide you to know what kind of goal you can set for yourself in the next 1 month to 3 months. Then who you will become in the next 3 months will be the premise on which you set your 6 months to 1 year goal. So knowing that I'm going to become, probably I have the worst writing and speaking skills ever, and I want to become a public speaker. My first goal could be to go to a public speaking school or a speech training school or something like that. That could be a 3-month goal. Then my next goal could be to start getting speaking gigs, maybe for free. And then my next goal could be then to start charging a certain fee that might not be what I really want to charge, but just because, I know that I'm still in my process, that's what I will charge. And then my long-term goal could be charging my desired fee, because I know that by that time I would have built myself into someone who is worthy or who is valuable enough, right, to charge this fee. I'm talking about value in terms of the value that you have to give the person, not the value that you have as an individual, because your value as an individual, it's just going to be there. Like, you are always going to be valuable. Okay. Now, also I want to talk about something that I learned from one of my mentors as well. And it's sort of like a way of setting goals that is it's an affirmatory style of setting goals. So more like an affirmation, but it's a way of setting your goals using affirmations. And I found it very helpful because remember that we are trying to create a level of belief in ourselves that we can attain those goals. And we're trying to speak our goals into existence because our mouths are very powerful. But don't worry, I would have a whole different episode talking about the power of the mind. And I hope that you would listen to that as well. Right. And then I would get to really explain how to set affirmatory goals in that episode. But it goes something along the lines of, I'm so happy and grateful. That is basically you're already expressing gratitude for the goal, because the goal is going to come because you believe it's going to come to you. Right. So I am so happy and grateful now that I earn $1 million by December 31st, 2024. You can see that goal depends on who owns the goal, but it's specific. What do you want to earn? $1 million. Depends on who owns the goal. It is measurable. You can see $1 million can be measured. It's quantifiable, right? Also, it is attainable. Depending on who has set that goal, right? It is relevant to a vision of someone who wants to make a lot of money, right? And it is time bound because I already put a date to it. So it follows all the rules of a SMART goal, but it also now has an affirmation. It's now affirmation tied. And that's what really makes it an interesting way and my preferred way of really writing down my goals. Also, it's very important for you to always write down your goals. Like, always write down your goals. You see, the pen, as they say, is mightier than the sword. And this is definitely mightier than the keyboard. So, write it down. I mean, you can put it on your phone or your laptop, but it's important for you to actually take pen to paper and write it down. You know, when you're writing something down, your pen is creating a physical connection with the words, but also a psychological connection with the intention behind those words. So it's very powerful to write down your goals. And 95% of people that are successful in the world all have their goals written down. So if you want to be one of them, you might want to also write your goals down. Also, there are different goals for different things in your life. So compartmentalize your goals. What are the goals for your relationship? What are the goals for your finances? What are the goals for your career or business? What are the goals for your personal development? What are the goals for your family relationship and friendship relationships? What are the goals for your health and personal wellness? You have to compartmentalize them and write out goals for all and every single one of those areas. Okay? So now we're going to be moving on to number 3. And remember what number 3 says. Number 3 of becoming your dream self says, do a life audit. So there's this trader who was into the buying and selling business. And this trader kept buying and selling. And she was making money, but she wasn't making profit. Now, this trader kept on buying stock and selling stock. And she just kept buying and selling. And she noticed that she was not really growing. And after a long period of time of experiencing this situation, she decides to open her store and really check the goods inside just to see what is going on. And then she realized at that point that there was some goods that were not really being bought. But each time she went to restock her products, she kept buying those same goods. So those goods were just piling up in a corner of her store. But because she never tried to just check to see what exactly was going on, she just kept going about her daily business. She did not figure this problem out or figure this thing out until she had already acquired a whole truckload of goods that nobody was buying. So had she done this assessment maybe earlier during her business, she would have discovered that this particular product, my customers are not buying it. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe it's not good for them, but she would have known not to buy those products or not stock those products again and stock the ones that people are actually buying. But because of her lack of assessment of her store and her business, she never got to find out what was not right about her business. And that's exactly how I want to take your life, right? You need to realize that you can't just be moving. I mean, moving and going is important, but it's also important to stop and take stock. What is an audit? An audit is basically an assessment, right, of your situation or of your establishment or whatever it is that you are trying to audit. So in here, in this topic, or this particular part, I'm talking about how you can assess your life. That is the only way to know where you are right now, what you need to add to yourself, what you need to let go of, and what you need to, continue to do. Basically, you would, at this point, know the things that serve you And you will at this point know the things that do not serve you so you can cut them off completely, right? And how do we go about making this assessment? How do we go about making the stock taking of our lives? So there's something called the wheel of life. And this part is actually a bit practical. So get ready. Take like a paper, I'm sure by now you have a journal, right? So take your journal or your notepad, write out these different categories, right? So I have the internal, we have the external. For the internal, we have the health, we have business/career, we have finances, we have the personal development. For external, we have your romantic relationship, we have your friends and family relationship, we have your fun and recreation time, and then we have your environment, right? Now, I want you to do something. It's called the wheel of life, right? Stock taking for your life right now. Any part that you have to grade it now according to how well you are doing on any of this, parts I just laid out. So part that you think is between 0 to 3 performance level, right? I want you to write red behind them. Right? And the part that you think it's between 4 to 7 performance level, I want you to write orange on them. Then the part between the 8 to 10 performance level, I want you to write green on them. Good. Now that you have done that, you have an idea of what parts of your life you currently are flourishing at. The parts that you see green written on are the parts that you are flourishing at currently. So let's say if you have green in your significant order, you're flourishing in that part. Good. Kudos to you. If you have green in your finances, you're flourishing in that part. Kudos to you. If you have green in your environment, kudos to you. You are flourishing there. You see, if you have orange in some parts, that means those parts are kind of struggling to keep up. And it means that you might need to pay extra attention to those parts. But the parts where you have red, those parts they're crying for help. They are basically begging to be noticed by you. And you need to start noticing them and paying attention to them. So having this wheel of life, personally, I would suggest that you don't just do it once and forget all about it. I think you should make it a habit to do this maybe every quarter if you're too busy. But if you can, why not do it every month? See what parts of your life are struggling so that you can know what parts to prioritize and, how to go about making sure that you are able to achieve a little bit of, balance sort of, in your life. Now, another way that we are going to help you take stock of your life or do your self-audit is by looking at the limiting beliefs that you have about yourself. Talking about limiting beliefs, I mean, those beliefs that you have internalized about yourself, those negative thoughts that you have kept in about yourself. When someone told you when you were younger that you could never amount to anything, he's a failure. She's a failure. We have some people that when we were younger, they were just placed in our life to create a negative, experience for us. But thankfully, they no longer have power over us because now we have grown into ourselves and we have learned from this podcast that we have the power to change our story. We can now reclaim our identity. We can now decide what we want to be called and who we want to become. So if somebody had told you when you were younger that you are a failure, it's time for you to now negate it and decide that you are not a failure. Rather, you are a success. So now write out all your limiting beliefs. If it's about money, write it out. It's about relationships, go ahead and write it out. It's about, your ambitions or your goals, about whatever you want to do that you think you're not good enough to do. Write out every single limiting belief that you have of yourself. I'm not going to read these things. So you have to be honest with yourself when you're writing them down. This is you taking an honest audit with yourself for your own benefit. So don't hold anything back. This is a very healing exercise. So write it down. Write as many as you remember. In fact, you can take your time. Don't be in a rush. Remember, go back into your childhood. Every word that was said to you that you think that you don't think serves your dream life or your ideal self, write those words down in a sheet of paper. If you need to use 10 sheets, go ahead and use 10 sheets. Now, in the next sheet of paper, I want you to now do my favorite part, which is now write out the reverse of those limiting beliefs. So if you were said that you would never amount to anything, write it there. I am so happy and grateful. Remember that we now write our goals in affirmative words. I am so happy and grateful now that I am a successful business woman. You would never be a pilot. You don't have the ability to get to that point. You would write it on your other sheet now. I am so happy and grateful now that I have become a pilot. You will never make any money. I am so happy and grateful now that I am wealthy, abundantly wealthy. Every limiting belief that has been said to you, either by yourself or by anybody that you have ever encountered in your life, I want you to counter those beliefs. Write the counter of those beliefs in another sheet of paper through affirmative means of writing. And those ones, you will then paste them on your walls within the line of vision for yourself. Pick a point in your house. It could be your living room. It could be your bedroom. It could be your study. Wherever you spend a lot of time, put it there. You must always see those things. Now, the paper that has the limiting belief, what do we do with those ones? We take them and we rip them apart into the tiniest pieces possible. Don't rumple and throw. No, we are ripping, we are tearing them into tiny papers where they are almost not even legible anymore. Then you pack those pieces and you throw them away because now those things are no longer your reality. They no longer hold any power over you. Your new reality is that which you have pasted in affirmative words on your wall. Right? So we have audited our beliefs now. Now, let's talk about what do we do with the wheel of life. Now that we know our red, our orange, and our green zones, we will now start to create steps with which we can turn our oranges and our reds into greens, and how we can also keep the greens be at green. You don't want the green to enter into red because you have abandoned it and focused only on red, right? You have to find a way to keep greens at greens while you now elevate orange and red to green. So let's go now into the step 4. And this is my favorite step actually. Take action. At this point, I hope you are still following me and I hope that you are enjoying this podcast. This podcast is going to help you transform into your best self. And I cannot wait to hear all the stories and testimonies of your amazing transformation. So now I want to talk about getting in action mode. There's one quote I like. I think it says, "Only the men of action are favored by the goddess of good luck." You know what that means? It means anybody can dream. Anybody can have visions. Anybody can set goals. But only the ones who take action are the ones who will actually get the results they seek. I have a story to tell. Now, there is a student who has gone to school and is in class, is in school. You know, doing what students do, staying in class, and everything. But by the time it gets to writing exams, this student never writes any exams. And the only action that was required of this student in that school was to write the exams so that they could get awarded a certificate. But this student never writes any exams. And then at the end of a 4-year period, which is actually the period for getting that particular certificate, the student doesn't get certificates. What was the reason? The student had visions and dreams of being a graduate, but the student didn't take the action that was required, which was to attend the classes and to write the exams. So you see, you can have visions of being something. You can even be in that environment where that thing can happen for you. You can have the goals, you can set the goals, you can create the environment, you can do all these other things. But you see, if you don't take the action, that thing just never happens for you. And so it's important for you to not only have visions and set goals, but to also take action. The prescription for all the success you desire is action. And the success that you desire can only be achieved through deliberate, intentional, and consistent action. So I want you to now we've done all the planning, we've written out the vision board, we have written down the goals, we have done the audit, we've done all the planning. So it's time for you now to get out of the planning and the thinking stage and get into the acting stage. You see, thinking and planning is not action, right? Now it's time for you to get on the field and to put all the thoughts and the plans that you have into action, right? So now how can we get into action? I think a lot of people, myself included, we have spent a lot of time, weeks and months, some people even years, just planning, creating the idea of their dream life, visualizing and I love visualization so much, right? But there's a time to visualize. There's a time to write your goals down. And there is a time to go on the field and work, because it's only the act of doing, right, that will bring you the results that you want. Point. So how do we get in action mode? So I know that a lot of people, myself inclusive, can get pretty overwhelmed quickly when you look at your goals and you just see all these mighty, lofty goals that you've set for yourself, and you get overwhelmed, sort of like intimidated, and you draw into your shell, and then you start procrastinating. You start saying, you know what, I'll do it tomorrow, because it looks too big and too massive. It kind of just forces you it forces fear upon you. Now, that is why I explained the concept of having your long-term goals, your short-term goals, and your mid-term goals. But now let me give you like a very lovely thing that I learned from a book called The One Thing. And this book taught me, how to break down my goals into smaller chunks. So basically this book says that the majority of your results in life come from minority of your action. So it's basically the 80-20 rule. So you need 20% of your action to create 80% of your results. Eureka. I was like, what? But we just think that we have to do everything. We put everything on our plate and we start getting overwhelmed. Meanwhile, not everything on our plate is actually necessary at that point in time. This is why it's good for you to break down your goals so that you can be able to see what is needed, right, at the point in time. All your goals are important, but not all of them are urgent. So you need to know the important and the important goals, and you have to know the urgent goals. I had to learn how to go from having a to-do list to having a success list. A to-do list can go from 10 to 20 things that you need to do. maybe even 30 things, and you start feeling like, that's so much to do. And then you just lose your willpower. You just run out of steam. You don't get to do anything. And that used to be me every single time. But when I learned how to use something we call a success list, I became a lot more productive. And guess what? On that list, I only have 4 things, maximum of 5 things on it. And those are the 5 most important tasks to complete in that day. It might look like, that's a lot, that's only very few, but ask yourself, what is the one most important thing that I must do today upon which I can now then build every other thing? Because there's this concept that I also learned from this book, The One Thing, which I think you should read, by the way. It's the concept of your willpower and how your willpower is like a currency and it can get used up quickly. So that's why it's important for you to wake up in the morning and do the most important task first. So that by the time your willpower has diminished, it has gone down, you have already done the most important task of the day. You can now struggle to get the willpower to do any other of the more, mundane tasks. But at least the major one, the elephant in the room, has already been addressed. Also, I've discovered that when you face the most important task of the day first, that helps you build confidence to be able to go after the remaining tasks that you have to do. So I like to use this tactic to get more productive every single day. So I know that we want to achieve so many things. We have our goals for our finances, for our relationships, for our health, for this, for that. Cut everything down into one goal each. One goal for your finances, one goal for this one goal for that. When you have all these one goals, focus on those one goals. That's the one goal with which you can now build on to achieve every other thing. Once you figure out how to work like this, you have hacked productivity. Once you figure it out, you have hacked productivity, and that's it. And remember, you want to be productive for you to be successful. Successful people are productive people. Now, also, repetition leads to mastery. When you do something over and over and over and over again, it kind of registers in your subconscious. And sometimes it now becomes a part of you that it takes even less energy to accomplish. So if you set a goal, right, I think it takes 45 days for the human mind to pick up on a new habit, to form a new habit, right? Now, if you pick a goal and you are on that goal, repeating that goal over and over and over, you do that same task every single day, 45 days or 2 months or maybe even 3 months, by the time it's 90 days, it should have become a part of you, more like part of your subconscious, that it will take little or at least less amount of effort to do or to accomplish that goal. And you see, somehow you can now create that. Now gives you room to take on another task. So allow yourself to pick one, go on that one over and over and over, and make it a part of you. Create mastery around that one, and then you can now move on to the next thing, right? Also, I'm going to leave this particular point with this line. The more you take action, the more you build momentum. And the more you build momentum, the more you gather evidence. So when you start, even in your confusion, you just started that thing, keep at it. You are building momentum. As time goes on, that momentum is your evidence. So when they say, no evidence, you tell them evidence day, evidence choke. All right. So now let's move on to the last and final point, which is creating your success environment. Now, this is, I know I said a couple of the points I have mentioned are my favorite point, but I think I'm biased towards this particular point because it's a very important topic to me. It's highlighted in this point. And I want you to pay, if you've been listening to this podcast, half-heartedly up until this moment, or let's say you were distracted watching TV, doing something else, I want you to actually turn off all distractions and pay extra attention to this particular point. Why? Because this point is going to lead into episode 3, which is actually one of my most powerful topics that I've spoken about yet on this podcast, right? So creating your success environment. Remember, success is deliberate. It's achieved through deliberate, intentional, consistent action. One of the deliberate actions that you can do to create success is by deliberating, creating an environment that is conducive for you to achieve your success. The first environment that you create is the environment inside, within, the environment in your mind, right? Now, the mind is where all the battles are won first before anywhere else. Your mind is the most powerful battlefield. That's where you must conquer first before you can conquer anywhere else, right? So I need you to have the right mindset. I need you to cultivate the right level of belief, the right and the most conducive mindset for your success. First, how can you do that? I will talk about protecting the inputs. And, we have so many input zones as human beings. We have the eyes, that's the vision. We have the ears, that's the hearing. We have the skin, feeling. We have the mind, thinking. We have the nose, which is perceiving. And those are some of our input points. And when I say you have to protect them, you have to guard them. Because a lot of times, the thoughts that we have, right, in our head are due to the words that we heard, the things that we saw, the things that we felt. So protect the kind of things that you expose yourself to seeing, the kind of things that you expose yourself to listening to or to hearing, the kind of things that you expose yourself to feeling. When you are in a negative situation, you begin to develop negative feelings, and that would breed an environment for negative thinking. See how it's all connected, right? When you see negative things, when you feed your eyes negative things all the time, that creates negative thoughts and you dwell in a negative thought process. When you hear negativity all the time, same thing. So it's like giggle, garbage in, garbage out. So you need to be very careful about the things that you allow yourself to experience, to see, and to feel. I have something I do. People think I'm crazy for doing it, but as a woman, it's something that I feel like has really helped me. I learned earlier on in life that negative experiences, when you are exposed to them repeatedly, can form a negative, it kind of alters your brain chemistry, and you just somehow start attracting more of those experiences. And so when I meet a guy, let's say we go on the first date, and I can sense that he's going to bring me a negative experience, maybe due to the way he treats me on that date, or just due to the way he conducts himself on that date, I kind of just take a step back. Because I'm not going to allow myself to get exposed to that negative experience. I am deliberately trying to reduce the amount of negative experiences I'm going to encounter in my life. So when I sense one coming, I am cutting it. I take the scissors and I cut it short immediately. You can call it whatever, but I am protecting myself. I'm protecting my success environment. I take myself very seriously, and you should too. So when I feel like you will bring me a negative experience, before you bring it, I can sense, and I do what? I move. I don't want you to bring it to me. Also, when you're fond of speaking negative words, I will limit my time spent in your presence. Be you friend, family, or whatever. I am an adult now, so I can decide where I want to spend my time. I spend my time where I will get fed with positive words, affirmatory words, words that are going to uplift me, not words that are going to pull me down. Remember, deliberate action. Even with TV, I don't expose myself to things that are not positive information. I try to limit. I mean, it doesn't mean that I haven't seen things that are negative, but the ones I can control, I try to limit it because I see my mind as a fertile ground. Whatever I plant in it, due to what I watch or what I hear or what I feel, is actually what gets to germinate and grow. So I am not allowing for negative thoughts and words, feelings and, visions into my space. That is number one step of protecting or creating your success environment, right? Another way to create your success environment is to build the right support system around you. It's important for you to be where you are often celebrated, where the people that are around you, they love you, they support you, and they speak affirmatory words into your life and not derogatory words or words that can tear you down. So I am intentional about my circle, right? And who I talk or who I tell about, my goals. Cause some people are dream killers. Or they try to, cause nobody can kill your dream except you. That's the honest truth. But they can try to. So when you tell some people about your dreams, you can already sense that they have a negative feeling towards your dream and they try to communicate that negative whatever to you in a bit to discourage you. People who often have negative things to say about you, you need to try to be less around them. That's not a support system. That is a destructive system, right? Also, I want to you need to try and get a mentor. You say a mentor shortens your journey to success. A mentor is kind of like the bridge. It kind of just helps you to avoid taking the longer journey and takes you through the shortcut. So if you can get a mentor, you should get one. Sometimes you might not be able to have access to who you want to mentor you directly because you just haven't got to that point where you can have access to them yet. So you can look online and see if they have any videos or they've written any books or they have any kind of like courses that you can purchase so that you can be able to have access to them, at least an indirect access to what they have, the information that they have that you want to learn from. So you don't have to always reach out to them because sometimes they might not be able to mentor you. You're not there yet, but you can gain access to them through these means, right? So that's about that part. Also, you want to practice gratitude. Gratitude is so important. You see, gratitude, they say, is the seed for more. When you're grateful for what you have, you attract even more into your life. So that's why I say when you write your goals, write it, I am so happy and grateful. You're grateful and you're affirming, right? So I want you to start being in a gratitude state of mind. Like, it's so important for you to always be grateful and be in that state of mind of gratitude, right? Also, I want you to nurture your body, nurture yourself, like treat your body like a temple. And this goes to what you eat, what you put in your mouth. This goes to how much sleep you give yourself. Speaking of that, I'm coming. This goes to regular health checkups. This goes to taking breaks when necessary. This goes to creating time for fun and recreation. You see, talking about how much sleep you have coming from me could sound a little bit hypocritical because I used to be the person who would not sleep. Like I was for like 2 years in my life, I was so sleep deprived. And I didn't even realize how much harm I was doing to my body. And that is a form of not loving myself. So when I realized that, I had to start finding ways to change that behavior. As much as I want to become great and achieve something, I need to realize that this is the temple that I will use to create that greatness, right? It's all part of the package. So if I do everything and this temple is not in a state where it can receive greatness due to ill health, then I have failed ultimately. So I have to make sure that I'm carrying every single part is being catered to and taken care of properly. So I had to be allocating sleep time, and I had to be disciplined enough to actually stick to it. So you have to sleep. You have to get enough sleep or rest. You have to eat the right meal, because also the intake, that your food intake and water intake, it also helps you determine your level of energy. And remember, productivity is key. If you don't have enough energy, then you cannot be productive, right? So yes, there's that. Also, you want to take breaks. You are not a machine. You are a human being, and you need to be able to take some breaks where you can allow your mind rest, where you can allow allow yourself a bit of time off the hustle and bustle of life, right? Also, you want to create time for fun and recreation. All work and no play makes Princess a dull girl, and all work and no play makes you a dull you. Now, also, you want to celebrate yourself. Celebrate yourself as often and as frequently as possible. When you hit a milestone in your life, if you can afford to take yourself out for dinner, take yourself out for dinner. If you can't afford to eat out yet, cook yourself a special homemade meal. Sit in your dining table, get a glass of water, juice, soda, whatever you drink, and celebrate. Cheers to that accomplishment. Trust me, nothing is too small to celebrate. Actually, cultivate the habit of celebrating the small wins. And to that you would remember, gratitude is a seed for more, right? So celebrate every single thing about yourself. You are worthy of celebration, right? And now to conclude this, I want to also say, heal yourself of past trauma. Everything that's happened to you in your life, in the past, the good, the bad, the ugly, you need to forgive yourself. You need to allow yourself to heal from it so that you can move forward and move into your new self. You can move into the new phase, the new era of your life. So you can move into becoming your ideal self. You can now reclaim your power and become that girl. Remember, our backgrounds and circumstances may have influenced who we are, but only us, we are responsible for determining who we will become. So thank you for listening to episode 2 of the Beauty, Brains and the Bag podcast with Powerful Princess. Until next time, stay pretty and pretty powerful. Stay pretty and pretty powerful.